Susan said, I'm Pam Payne. I've been tasked with talking a little bit about the history of Hicksville. And I feel a little silly doing that just simply because you guys probably know more than I do. But we'll give it a shot here. We are looking forward to an anniversary of our town of Hicksville coming up this year. And of course, as a historical society, that means a lot to us. We're excited about that. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about the birth of Hicksville, the start of Hicksville. And we have to go pretty far back, even before Hicksville started, to do that. So we're going to start with post-Revolutionary War America, right? So late 1700s. We have a very young country with very little resources. They need to pay, the country needs to pay for the soldiers that fought during the war, right? They have very little in the way of taxes to build infrastructure and all those good things that a young country needs to do. So the one asset that they had that they could build on was land, right? So you guys remember middle school civics class? That's what we called it when I was in school. You remember the Northwest Territory? That doesn't seem very Northwest to us now, but we're talking about Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois, and Michigan, and Wisconsin. I think those are the current states that made that up. So they had this territory that they were able to sell and to use for raising money for this young country. And this, when we're talking about our time period now, and or when Ohio starts to be settled, our area of Northwest Ohio was probably the last part of Ohio for European settlers to come in. Three main reasons for that. One reason was proximity to the Ohio River, right? I mean, that's what people use for transportation to get here, and we were pretty far away from the Ohio River, so that wasn't going for our area. Another reason was basically the Native Americans that were in the area, okay? It wasn't until after 1796 that there was a skirmish, a conflict between the U.S. and Native Americans, and then the War of 1812, which ultimately pushed the Native Americans out of our area. And then the third thing that prohibited people from our area was a geographical reason, right? You guys know what that is, right? The Black Swamp, right? Just a place that made it extremely difficult to live, the mosquitoes, the disease, the swampiness of it, right? So people weren't really interested in coming to our area. But those things were fixed with the advent of the potential of canals, making transportation easier, which would also help with drainage purposes and that sort of thing. And then governmental alliances that allowed for the Native Americans to be pushed out of our area. And our area, you've probably heard, was not really a village for Native Americans, but it was certainly used as hunting grounds and that sort of thing. The Native Americans didn't want to live in the swamp any more than we did. I remember as a kid, my uncle collecting or hunting for arrowheads off Jericho Road, and he had a huge collection of arrowheads. So we know that there were a lot of Native Americans in our area hunting and such, but not so many that were living here. So then we get to the Hicks Land Company, which of course is our namesake, right, for Hicksville. So a land company basically was given the opportunity to buy huge tracts of land from the government. So the Hicks Land Company, Mr. Henry Hicks, they bought lots and lots of acreage out here, and specifically in our area, they had about 140,000 acres that they bought for $1.25 an acre. Okay, so that was their cost. Then their job was to divide it up into little parcels and sell it to settlers and other individuals. So they send a guy out here to our area in 1836, okay? And he comes out here ready to sell to people, encourage them that living in the swamp wasn't such a bad idea after all. And he sold 0 acres, 0 plots of land, did nothing. reported back to the Hicks Land Company and was promptly relieved of duties. And the next year, in 1837, in comes our guy, Mr. A.P. Edgerton. Okay, imagine this guy. He's a kid that was born and raised in upstate New York and was working in New York City as a clerk or a bookkeeper for this big land and shipping company, the Hicks Company. And they say, hey Alfred, you want to go west? How about you try to sell some of this land for us? Can you imagine the adventure for this 24-year-old guy just heading out west? So he goes west. And when he gets there, there's a few people living here already. And so it's his job to sell their land to them, right? They're already living there. They already have their homes, and it's his job to sell. And he does. He sells it to the people who are already living here for $5 an acre. Now, I know it's still not a lot in our day and age. I don't know what's the current sales at, thousands, right? Thousands. But it was still going from what they bought it for, $1.25, to selling it again for $5. That's a pretty good profit, I would think. So over the next 15 years, sorry. Over the next 15 years, he manages to sell just about everything. And what he doesn't sell, he buys for himself. So it's curious to me what made Mr. A.P. Edgerton, this young man, often an inventor, so much more successful than this other guy. You know, what was it about A.P. that people were willing to buy from him and not from this other guy? I don't know. I wish I knew, because it would be interesting. I won't go too much further. There's a lot more to Mr. Edgerton's story. There's a lot more to Hicksville's story. But I just think it's interesting that this guy from New York, from the city, came out here and stayed. You know, he didn't just sell the land and then head back to the city. He ended up staying here the rest of his life, here and in the Fort Wayne area. And I think that's neat. And I think it's a testimony to Hicksville that, you know, maybe there's something here that caused him to stay. Maybe it's that same thing that makes a lot of us stay or come back or move in at some point. So, and that is my task. Next up we have Susan.
Two things that A.P. Edgerton was responsible for. First of all was the land office, which is right across the street. And it was named that because that's what its original purpose was. That building was built in 1840, and it is in its 4th location. So it started out, I think it started out over here. Was it across the street where it started?
I thought it was the Slattery corner.
I think it was where the building was, I think.
Okay. Well, it moved, it was on a couple different corners, and it was behind the building and loan at one time, because it was the building and loan at one time. And it ended up, the building and loan eventually gave it to the library. So it's owned and it's actually owned not by the library, but by the Friends of the Library, because they're the ones that own the library building, and they also own the land office and lease that now to the Historical Society. Also, A.P. Edgerton built the Episcopal Church next door, and he built that for his wife. And for lots of years, there were Episcopalians, and the church operated as it actually, I think, only had one Episcopal priest that was here full-time in the early years. And in like the 1900s, it was mainly priests that would come from Defiance and have services. And there never were very many Episcopalians in Hicksville. And it closed several times, and at the end there were, I think, 2 members when it finally closed as an Episcopal church. But it was owned for a number of years by the Episcopal Diocese in Cleveland. But they had basically had an agreement with the Historical Society to maintain that church. Now, the Historical Society started as the Friends of St. Paul Episcopal Church because 50 years ago, when Hicksville was celebrating their centennial, the church, 50 years ago when Hicksville was celebrating their centennial, the Episcopal Church was also celebrating 100 years. And it was at that time that a few people here in Hicksville knew that that church needed lots of work in order for it to be maintained. And so they started the Friends of the Church and raised significant monies at that time to make repairs. And I know many of you, when we had it open, many of you went over and have seen it, but it is relatively original, and it's been maintained all these years. And the Friends of the Church, like maybe 5 years later, decided that they needed to be the Historical Society and expand what they were doing here in Hicksville. So they changed from being Friends of the Church to the Hicksville Historical Society. And the Friends of the Library leased the building, the land office, to the Historical Society because the library really didn't have any use for it at that time. So it served a great purpose. So basically now, and then just in this past year, the Historical Society has become the owner of the Episcopal Church. And it was given to them by the diocese. But we had to go through lots of paperwork related to that because A.P. Edgerton, in his transfer, said that that church should always be used as a church. And so we had to had to involve a lawyer and do lots of paperwork. And it still is being used as a church, but not one that people go to every Sunday. So next, Colleen will talk about what's happening currently with the Historical Society.
Hello, thanks for having us here today. About 6 years ago, it became evident that the Historical Society, which had been in operation for 40-some years, wasn't really operating. It had reduced their membership to the point where there were just a small handful, and a few years after that, there were 2 people running things for the Historical Society, which was a big job and not a lot of it getting done. And then one of the persons died, so you can see where that left the Historical Society. A handful of us decided we needed to do something. There were too many artifacts and historical pictures and documents and even buildings that needed attention. So we very slowly got the wheels turning to revitalize the Historical Society, and we did some regrouping. We have a new board, and very slowly we're building our membership back up. Our goal, of course, is to preserve, protect, and cherish what we have, but we also want to get the word out. We need more members. We need more money. We need more support. The current board is the 4 of us who are speaking today, plus Angela Powell, Kent Miller, Vicki Gottschall, and Roger Gottschall. We also have a couple of people who are grant writers, so they would be very helpful in the future. Writing grants, we have a couple of people who will work on special projects, and we value all of these people and their help. When we took over, I guess took over is a good enough word, what we found was the land office in really good shape, full of artifacts, documents, pictures, memorabilia, everything about the town of Hicksville. We found St. Paul's vacant and in need of some work. We found a treasury that was in pretty good shape, thanks to a bequest from someone, but we've had to spend some money. As Susan said, acquiring ownership of the church was a big deal. And the reason we felt it was important to do was, without ownership, you can't get grants, you can't get loans, you can't get funding, you can't get community support. And all those things are going to be essential for the reasons that Tom's going to tell you about in a few minutes. So we spent some big bucks on an attorney, and we now own the building. So looking forward, now we have to do owner things. But we're optimistic, we're energetic, we've gotten some great help from a lot of people, and we appreciate all of it. We will continue to move forward to build our membership, to take care of the things that we have, and find ways to share it with the community. We are, one of the things that we've been doing is having the buildings open on a regular basis for people to visit. Costs nothing to come and see them, and we've had some good interest. We've had some meetings at the land office. The County Genealogical Society came and had one of their meetings with us, and they loved the place. They were very excited about what they were seeing, they were excited about what we were doing, and they gave us a lot of helpful information, all of which we need. We hope to participate in the sesquicentennial next year. We've got some ideas about that. We plan to partner with the school again. We used to have the 3rd or 4th grade classes come every year, visit the land office, see the things that we had, and one of the volunteers would talk about the history of Hicksville. That has been suspended for a number of years. We're hoping to get that back again, as are the teachers. So we're working on it. If you have any ideas for us, please let us know. If you want to help out, if you want to give us money, hey, we're not going to tell you no. But the Historical Society is still a viable entity in Hicksville, and we appreciate your support. So now Tom will tell you a lot of things that you need to know.
I'm Tom Battershell, and I'm a newbie. I've only been with the Historical Society for about 2 years. Susan Mack asked me, she goes, Tom, would you be interested in helping us with the Historical Society? I've always loved history. I love local history, and I always loved having elders around town tell me stories about Hicksville. So I said, sure, I'll give it a whirl. I don't have a lot of great attributes, but one was I could try to help them with the building. So we had the land office, and there was a gutter that was down, so I put the gutter up. We had some columns that were rotten out due to that gutter being unattended for years. So we got that done. We put a new front door on, and I painted the front door. And then once we acquired St. Paul's, that had a lot of other stuff that needed done as well, but structurally it was really good, and we didn't know how to start. So my son's a home inspector, and I asked him if he would come and give us a suggestion as to what we should do first to preserve the building. So he came and he spent about an hour and a half on it, and he said, I said, Tyler, what's the first thing we should do? He said, number one, you gotta get the water out, because right now, as you see it over there, the church sort of sits down a little bit, and there were no gutters on it. He said, get gutters on there first. The foundation of that, he said, was in relatively good shape, which I was surprised, but it looks like somebody done something maybe in the 1970s, because there was a big footer that looked like it was poured about then. So he found me a mason, and he tuck pointed it for 2 days, got it all done, so the foundation's good. And then he said, what you need next to do is to grade it like a swale, so we could get the water away from the church. And we had critters down there, so I think we got rid of most of the critters. And then the next thing he said, I don't know how good the support is for your stained glass windows. So when we had the Defiance Historical Society come to our building, I was telling him that we needed our glass looked at, and he stopped me afterwards and says, there's a guy named James Lumpkin in Fort Wayne. He said he would be happy to do that. I says, we don't have a dime. Would he do it? And he goes, he would. He would look at it. He liked stained glass that much that he would work with you. So our thought is when he brought his own, when he came over, he charged us $50 to give us an assessment of the windows. He said, actually, these are really good shape for 1875. He knew the glass and everything else. The west side, of course, is the worst. So what he said he'd have to do is take out each section, there's 2, so that would be 1. And I think he's gonna take out 5 of those sections. So he'll take them out, take them to Fort Wayne, take them all apart, clean the glass, put all new lead, and then there's like a support stanchion that goes across the windows so they don't blow out. He's gonna come and do that here, but he'll take all the glass windows to Fort Wayne. So I said, well, I reiterated the point that we don't have much money, and he says, I understand that, we're hoping to get a grant. He goes, that's how I get a lot of my business. People don't have the money at first, they get a goal in mind and they go forward. So once he looked at it, he said he could probably do it between 18 and 20,000. And that would be everything out, re-clean, re-lead, and he'd put an exterior finish on it. So that's what we're planning on doing. The other thing, we have a tree that's right there, sort of rotten, that if it fell down, it would demolish the church. So we'd like to get rid of that tree. And then if we raise the money, or if we do successfully get this grant, that's where that grant money would go, is for the windows. So what we gotta do now is like dredge where the water doesn't come down in the bottom of the church. And then if we can get the windows redone, that would be a big thing. But I need to go in there now and start cleaning on the inside of the windows, because there's no heat, no insulation over there. There is heat, but we don't use it because there's no insulation. So once we get the inside of it painted, he would take those windows out and put them back. We might incur more cost because if whenever you dig into a project, you always find out something that you weren't planning for. So I think that'll likely happen. But it's James Lumpkin, and he said, I'll wait for 2 years, whatever you want. I'll come back and reassess it if you want me to. But that's what we want to do, is write a grant so we can get those windows refurbished. And he said he's got some colors that can match. There's like 8 or 10 that are just chipped and cracked. He would replace those too. But that's all I've got for right now, and that's what our goal is to do those things first before we add other things to our project. Next, I'll turn it over to Melissa Dalton, all the way from Dayton, Ohio.
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Dalton, and I'm a consultant working with the Hicksville Historical Society. When was it you contacted me, Susan? It was earlier March, and we had a meeting about trying to get them back on track since they had just started back up in 2022. So I'm working with them to develop policies to make sure that once they are, so they can operate fully functionally and make sure that they are following their policies and can actually help share the stories of your community. So if you guys have any help you're willing to provide them is going to be greatly appreciated. And if you have any questions about the type of work we're going to be doing, it's kind of all over the place right now. I think we're trying to figure out what the first step needs to be. But we're evaluating the collection, evaluating the space, and working on what policies they're going to need to create, and helping with memberships and drives. So it's an all-inclusive project that we're working on right now. So they really do appreciate all of the support you can provide. I think that's about all I have for you.
Are there any questions for the Historical Society? I have a question. As you apply for this grant, is this with the state of Ohio? Can they apply at like Defiance Area Foundation, or do you know where these will go, these grant applications?
Well, we can find something we can apply for.
All the above. I mean, we're looking at both state and local.
Okay, good. And is something that, Melissa, that you can help them with, or not necessarily? Is that your line of work at all?
I do. I'm aware of different grants that are out there, and that is something we were talking about as well earlier today about what grant opportunities are out there. There are preservation grants that can help with capital improvements. There are collection grants to help them with, getting their collection in order. So there are a lot of different options out there. Really what it comes down to is the competitive nature of these grants too. So there are a lot of different organizations that are vying for it. So it's making sure that we are getting the language right so that they can actually be awarded the grants.
Well, thank you, I appreciate all that you do, and, you know, Hicksville, we're lucky to have people that do this. What would happen if nobody ever preserved our history or did anything? And if you haven't been over to the land building and looked at it, it's pretty awesome. And then also I've been told, I think Diane Grimm told me that there's a couple storage units full of stuff yet too. Are there any plans ever to add on to the historical building at all? Is that a thought that's occurred?
It's a thought, but I don't think it's a practical thought.
Okay.
There really isn't space there, and we would have to pay for it, so.
Right, I just thought when I was over there, it seemed like it was so full that I thought someday they're gonna have to
Well,
maybe.
absolutely, one of our projects is looking for more space, either a temporary storage or a more permanent area where we can move some of the collections and have them be protected but yet accessible, so we need more space, absolutely.
And I don't know, one thing is like the Bancrest building, the old Bancrest building. I heard there was gonna be space there. I didn't know if they could designate a room for storage temporarily, how long that would be. That would be good, but there's a lot of areas around Hicksville. It's just we gotta get the word out there to see where we go next to place all
It's
this.
so nice that it's visible here, but anyway, so you guys, as you near croaking, I'm talking about you, Postman, add that in your will, put that in as a part of it, goes to the Historical Society. I will tell you also, guys, that this is laid on everybody's table. If everybody could give something, you know, we can all afford to give a little something, what it costs to go out to eat or do anything. We skipped a meal, we could do that. I could skip a couple, maybe so. But anyways, I thank the Historical Society and all you people and all that you guys do for the community, because I know that you guys do more than just Historical Society, and giving is all part of making Hicksville better, in my opinion. So if nobody has any other question, we'll stand and we'll be dismissed by the Pledge of Allegiance.